Welcome to episode 83 of Brews Less Traveled, a podcast exploring the best uncharted beer scenes across the U.S. I'm your host, Brian, and I'm happy again to be joined once more by our co-host for these Albuquerque episodes, Isaac Bell. Isaac, how's it going?
It's good. Great to be back again. Can't believe we're nearly done.
Yes. Sadly, we are nearly done this year. And for our final ABQ episode and our final episode of 2022, we're featuring Boxing Bear Brewing Company, another great brewery out of the Albuquerque, New Mexico area. Boxing Bear was originally founded in Corrales, New Mexico in July of 2014. They were named Mid-Size Brew Pub of the Year at the 2016 Great American Beer Festival. They've since expanded to 4 locations around New Mexico and recently moved into a new 10,000 square foot production facility. We're going to talk about all of those things in a minute here. We're also going to be featuring their Ambear Ale. Nice little pun there. Their Amber Ale and their chocolate milk stout. And we're going to be joined by one of the owners and head brewer from Boxing Bear. So please, without further ado, help us welcome Justin Hamilton. How's it going, Justin?
Doing well. How are you guys doing today?
No complaints yet.
Not yet.
Right?
Not yet. Cool. So thanks for joining us, Justin. Let's get into our quick sip questions. These are fast questions, fast answers. Help us get to know you fastly or fast.
Faster.
Cool.
Better.
Faster. Yeah, there we go.
Faster is better.
Okay. Favorite non-Boxing Bear beer?
Ooh, on a regular, I drink a whole lot of probably La Cumbre products outside of Boxing Bear. La Cumbre beer is always a go-to. It's usually around New Mexico and Albuquerque pretty prevalently. Other than that, like BR.
Awesome. Green or red chilies?
Ooh, okay, so that's a hard one. It depends on where you go. So there's the green chili, there's chopped, there's sauce of both. It really depends on the location. I would say my favorite is probably just chopped green chili.
Okay. Green chili has been the prevailing answer this month. I say this month, it's not like we ask anybody else outside of, it's the ABQ thing. You want green or reds, and green seems to be the prevailing answer.
It also depends on my mood. Sometimes red, is just like where you want. So
that's right.
It's like beer.
That is honestly the most common answer. Is everybody's been like, it depends on my mood, depends on the day of the week. So it seems like nobody has strong allegiance to either one.
Definitely.
Speaking of allegiances, Czech or German Pilsner?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I tend to like Czech Pilsner as a more regular drinking beer, but I love the dryness of a German Pils. So probably Czech more regularly.
Okay. We're in the midst of the holiday season. Do you have a favorite holiday song, Christmas song?
Yeah, Feliz Navidad.
Ooh, that's a good
banger.
One. Yeah, anytime you just put it on whenever.
Yeah,
Christmas.
Yeah, even April, May. Yeah, middle of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and finally, our favorite quick sip question: have you ever seen a UFO, Bigfoot, a ghost, anything inexplicable?
No, I think anytime I've seen something that comes out to be a weather balloon or something like that, unfortunately, not too much paranormal activity that I've seen.
All right. That's okay. So, Justin, I'm going to go just a little bit rogue here because I am introducing us. Well, you're going to introduce us into our the beer that we're about to drink, which is the Ambear.
Okay.
But for those of us listening at home, they may not catch the actual visual here. And I just wanted to bring some attention to, because I have done it myself only for a brief period in time. Justin has a phenomenal wax mustache right now. And I want to know, I have a random question. Is that an everyday thing, Justin, or did you do it specially because you were coming on live with us today?
No, this is my morning look. I know it's still 1 o'clock here, but I had a meeting earlier, and it depends on how hard I work. I have a guy that has a mustache, and he keeps waxing it all day.
Yeah.
I'm more of like the one and done kind of waxer, and I let it get more rowdy throughout the day, I suppose. But no, I usually will do my mustache in the early day, and then whatever happens, happens.
Fair enough. Well, I know it's a tremendous amount of work. I mean, when I say I did it for like a month, I mean, I did it probably for like 4 days.
It can be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So kudos to you. So let's get into our first beer. We're going to pour it here. What do you want to tell us about the Ambear?
So Ambear is one of those beers where everybody asks what an amber is, and my best way to put that is whatever brewery you at is probably going to have a different version of amber. Our amber is light, it's balanced, it's got the malty side to it, but it's not exactly sweet. Things like Fat Tire and some of those other beers were just so much malt presence to it. This one has more of a balance. We actually dry hop this beer, but just slightly, just enough to give it some aroma. And we play a lot with the German varieties in this to give it almost like an alt beer kind of thing going on, but not as dry, but also just kind of more Americanized, where it's something you can pair with lots of food. It goes with almost anything. Anytime we have a beer dinner or something like that, amber always comes up because it's just it matches so many different flavors and aromas.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is delightful, by the way, as well.
Thanks. Yeah, it's one of those beers that when we opened our location in on the west side of Albuquerque, it didn't sell nearly as great as it did at other places, but all of a sudden we opened other locations and it just started booming. So it's funny just within the city itself, regionally, what people are drinking, but it is a great intro beer for people that just walk into the brewery. If you're not used to craft beer, it's definitely something that is approachable. It's not like over the top in either direction, where it's malty, but it's still drinkable, where it's not just like hanging on your palate with sugar.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very well balanced beer. Full disclosure, we normally record later at night. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast, and just giving it all out there. And I could not ask for a better beer to drink at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's so well balanced.
I will say that.
There's such a nice crisp finish that you don't commonly find in brown ales, and the hops are I wouldn't say they're jumping out of the glass. They're very nicely complementing that malt character that comes off of this beer. This is a beautiful beer.
Yeah, I feel like as brewers and breweries, we throw balance, like it's always, everyone talks balance, everyone says balance beer, and this is like what I think is a great example of just balance, because it's not really one way or the other, it's right down the middle. So it's enjoyable by kind of the more people because of that, if it makes sense. You got people that are really looking for something light or drinkable. Like right now, you're saying it's the afternoon. It's perfect to have something, but it's not just something that is just gonna rinse off your palate. It gives you a little bit of flavor. It gives you a little bit of something there where you can almost feel like you're drinking a craft beer, but it's not like something overwhelmingly strong or hard to get used to when you're drinking it. You want more of it.
Yeah.
Amber is one of those styles where you can have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you got the malty, You've got the hop, bitterness, and like you said, for pairing with food, it really is right down the middle here. And I think the dry hopping too here gives it that nice bite, at the very end.
It's something I learned from technique that from the previous brewery where I was working at. We had an amber on tap, and it was just a slow seller. It was a great beer, but we're like, let's throw a little bit of a dry hop in here. Let's just see what happens. And we did that, and it just made the beer so much more approachable. So we just kind of continued that idea, and that beer just kind of turned into something that people really enjoy it instead of something that got passed over in a flight.
Right. Yeah. Because that's where do you see ambers anymore?
Yeah. It's definitely become a New Mexico staple. Most breweries have something right down the middle like that. We're such a our state is still behind as far as craft beer is being consumed, I suppose. We have really good craft beer, but the general public of New Mexico is still drinking macros, which is fine still. But once we get people to try it, or they understand that there's more to it there's more flavor, there's more to be had, it's easy to convert people. But it's still having those products, available to people that are nice intro beers or stuff that we'll get people to sit down or come into our place and have another beer, try other stuff.
Yeah, I wish there was more amber beers, more brown ales, more of those kind of mid-range malt forward beers that drank like this, that presented like this with such balance.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, Boxing Bear was founded in 2014 by you and two other friends. Could you briefly walk us through the story behind wanting to start the brewery in those early days?
Sure. So at the time in the brewery I mentioned earlier, that was Chama River. So Chama River in New Mexico has a great reputation of great brewers coming out of it. I was lucky enough to work and be a head brewer for Chama for a while. And so during my time there, there was probably 3 or 4 breweries open in the state. And I was approached by Kevin Davis and David Kim. And Kevin was the owner of a homebrew shop. And David was his friend that pushed him to open it and to brew good beer and taught him about good beer. He was from Minnesota, so he kind of knew the ropes a little more about drinking and understanding craft beer. So he kind of got Kevin into it and started home brewing and stuff like that. So they started having the idea of let's try to open a brewery sometime, and they quickly kind of realized that it's not as easy as it sounds. That the professional aspect of it needs to be there, and they realized that and reached out to me. So at that time, we kind of formed a plan and took our time, and it took us about less than, honestly, a year to get a building, to get our equipment, to get everything in place. We probably met late 2013 for the first time, and then really took it seriously early 2014. And then we had opened that year by July. So it was a whole lot of work putting the brewery together. We did a lot of stuff ourselves, and we still continue with our new facility, which we'll talk about later. Either way, Boxing Bear kind of came out of this idea where we would get together and we would, share beers with each other. We would talk about what we could possibly do, and finally thinking I think we can make this happen. We've got quality, we've got the ability to understand the market, and then it just came to how do we do it? How do we get the money for this? How do we make it happen? So, opening on a tight budget, and basically me running the brewery front of house, which I should have been doing. As a brewer, my social skills are definitely lacking. But we learned our lesson with that, and over the last 8 years, we've picked up some great people, house brewers, and we've been lucky enough to get really good people and have people that care about beer and are passionate as we are about the product. So that's been good. The people always want to know what Boxing Bear came from, what the name comes from. Kind of a funny story. We're all dog lovers here. So there's like dogs at the brewery all the time. There's dogs in our offices like all the time. So at the time I had a couple dogs. One was a boxer mix. Her name was Danka, and then I had a big red-nosed pit bull whose name was Sal. And they would just like romp around and they'd wrestle and fight all the time. So it was like the boxer and the bear. And so it kind of just like turned into this idea and this thought. And so I pitched it at an idea at a meeting once, and everyone was like, "Yeah, I kind of like it. It's different. It's got lots of opportunities for names and just a play on words." So it was something we just kind of stuck to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's where that name came from. Actually, I have a like it's just a generic art like poster of a man like literally boxing a bear. They both have the gloves on. Yeah, it's goofy. So I was wondering where that name came from.
Yeah.
So in addition to being the mid-sized brew pub of the year honor, Boxing Bear has also taken home a number of awards at GABF as well as the World Beer Cup and the North American Brewers Association Awards. Do you feel like the expectations for brewery growth every time your name is called at these ceremonies?
You say growth?
Yeah. Do you feel like the expectations for the brewery grow every time your name gets
Oh, yeah. I mean, I honestly
a lot of accolades that.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I definitely feel that, but I think that we've kind of got to the point where we push ourselves as much as we can. I remember winning Brewery of the Year and really thinking like, let's not let this get to our head. Let's go back and brew better beer than this. And I honestly think we do. I think we're making better beer than we ever have, even with our move and our new location and stuff. Our product is better than it ever has been, and that's hard to say. But yeah, I feel like we really hold ourselves accountable almost more than awards sometimes. I'm big on making sure my staff knows that quality is our absolute all we have. That's all we got, you know. So we really try to push that and make sure that everything's done the same and really try to keep that standard high. But yeah, I mean, it is pressure sometimes where you feel, you know, like, man, we really got to make sure we're still winning awards and stuff like that. And I feel less bummed every time we don't win an award because it's great to get a nice pat on the back, but I also know that our business is doing all right and we're making good products. And yeah, so that's really what matters is having fun while you're doing it, and hopefully maybe someday making.
Try not to be your own worst critic, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get that too.
Yeah, so that leads me perfectly into my next question. That you know, those accolades, they're great. They certainly mean something to breweries and brewers especially. But I imagine that customer feedback still plays an important role in a brewery of your size.
Yeah.
What how do you take that feedback? What has the feedback been like since, you know, you've had those accolades and you have locals and loyal followers that you know, you're their hometown beer, you're their neighborhood brewery. How does that feedback affect, I guess, for lack of a better word, your hubris when you have all these medals around your neck?
Yeah, no, we definitely take our customer feedback into a lot of account. Like we are always, we want to know if something tastes different, if they think it tastes bad or off. And we're more than willing to correct that even in our draft, you know, stuff. So it's something we have trained our in-house staff to try to recognize, because there's always someone that maybe was chewing gum or eating something weird, or stuff happens. People don't like
Yeah.
IPAs. They drink an IPA and they don't think it tastes good. So that happens occasionally. But that being said, we do try to pay as much attention to that feedback as possible. And there are a handful of people, including local brewers, that I really listen to. There's a lot of people that I will make sure I, have their opinions like directed to me, because when I hear stuff from certain people, I'm like, there's a couple guys that drink IPA every day in the front of house, and so if they say it tastes different, then I'm gonna listen to them, because I don't drink IPA that much.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that we definitely take to heart, and we try to be good on record keeping, so that if we have issues, if there's stuff like that, we try to pinpoint what happened, or it's craft beer, so there's stuff happens sometimes. But trying to keep your thumb on it, or knowing why stuff happens, that's always like a good direction for improvement, making sure it doesn't happen again.
Sure. So I want to talk a little bit about our second featured beer, which we're getting ready to get into. Brian, I don't know about you, I have been super excited about this one since we got the box. It's a chocolate milk stout.
Yeah.
And it has been, I have been waiting to drink this for a long time. I didn't think it was going to be at 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon, but
it's a little colder where you are, right?
Yeah, it is. It's actually a miserable day outside.
It's awful.
Yeah,
it's like 40 and rainy. It's the worst weather.
So this will be great for the overcast weather, coldness. It surprises me that we can sell a milk stout in the middle of the desert and people are drinking it in the 90, 100-degree weather. But I guess that's a testament to the flavor of the beer. It's something that came up as a one-off special. We made it, I think maybe the first or second year we were open. And we just kind of threw this recipe together. I thought about, and it sold out. It went crazy. And it was one of those beers that we thought, this is pretty good. Let's throw it in a competition. And it immediately just started racking up accolades. And it's really thick. It's a sweet beer, and when you say sweet stout, it's sweet, but it's not. When you get into beers like Prairie and some of these like guys that are boiling and having stuff going forever, it's not that sweet. Which has its benefits, and sometimes people look over it because it's not as sweet. But it does have that texture. It's got that richness to it, and it's very creamy. A little bit of coffee. Yeah, a little bit of bitterness to it as well. It's not 0 IBUs, it's like 30, 35. So it's one of those beers where we just haven't changed it like since we started making it. It's just kind of continued to be pretty good. And it surprises us that it doesn't need much correction. I mean, it's just something we've just continued to make, and it's done well for itself. And yeah, it's a beer that just has kind of made our name, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's nice. I don't want a beer to give me diabetes.
Yeah.
So this is nicely balanced, and like you said, like a little bit of that coffee on the back end there.
Yeah, it's still a stout. It's still a stout,
right?
And I think that's kind of like where it's not a parfait beer. It's not a pastry stout.
Yeah.
It makes to us a difference. We separate them. We'll have pastry stouts, stuff like that, but I feel like this is just a sweet milk stout. And we've done barrel aged versions of it. We've done so many off. In fact, we just did a coconut version of this beer. It's really good. Like some people, I love it.
Toasted.
What was it? Oh yeah, toasted. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had done a toasted coconut, and we also added the Colaca liquid coconut to it. Just tried to give it, because it's such an overpowering beer. We really wanted to give it some coconut flavor. So
Sounds
that
like
one came out great. But yeah, the variations we've made with it, the beer itself, and the fact that it's also not too much alcohol. You know, it's sitting at like 5.5%. So it's still approachable. It's again not something that's 12-15% where you can only have one. You can actually, if you wanted to, drink multiple.
Right.
I think much like the Ambear, this beer is very well balanced, and I think the balance in here comes from the play between the malt and the lactose and the hop additions, and there's these different these different characteristics of dark malt that you get in here. You know, there's nice chocolatey tones to it, but there's also a really strong roast backbone that kind of drives through the whole beer. What how much does grain selection play a role in beers like this?
It's everything. I mean, so it's funny. Our recipes are either super simple. Our Pilsner has like 2 types of malt on it. And then our stouts, our browns, even with the Ambear, when we start getting into color flavor combinations, it just kind of gets a little ridiculous. Especially beers like this, where it's like it's just odd numbers of pounds to create either color or flavor combinations. So it's one of those things where I feel like the home brewer or people creating recipes do the opposite. They want to put a bunch of stuff in their pilsners or their IPA. They're really trying to get more interesting flavors, and I'm like, use that in your stout, use that in your brown. Get the combination of stuff when you're trying to play with flavor profiles. This is the place to do it. This is the place to get creative. And so that being said, yeah, there's a lot of not only things like carafa and chocolate malts in there, but we also have a good amount of caramel malt in there to kind of give it a little bit of that slight caramel sweetness without coming out like sometimes when you get it in a red or something, when it's like almost tastes oxidized. But this one, we try to play with that balance, and also not make it too roasty. We still want it to have a sweet taste to it without being too coffee, too much.
Yeah, I'm super averse to lactose sugar. I not that like it doesn't do anything to me. Like I can drink it. I think it gives me a hangover. That may or may not be true. Like I don't want to see it in my IPAs. That's a personal preference.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to a milk stout, I absolutely want to see it in there.
Yeah,
100% pastry stout, whatever. I get it with the darker beers, but this toes the line just like beautifully, like Brian was saying with the amber, right down the middle. There's not it's not overpoweringly sweet. As somebody who can like take a sip of a beer and be like, oh, there's lactose in there. I don't know if I would jump to that immediately on my first sip of this.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Go ahead.
like you alluded to people using it in IPAs and kind of cranking that lever up with the lactose, Isaac, and I think in this beer it's just another thread that comes together to make such a beautiful cohesive product.
Yep, 100%.
It's body enhancing. It helps with lacing. It's really all about, like you said, giving it a backbone, giving it something to play with, and of course it's milk stout. But yeah, it's one of those things where playing with lactose and also the cocoa nibs, it was just a fun combination to play with, and it's actually one of our harder beers we have to make because of all the stuff we put in there. So when we started like getting popular for the beer, it was like, shit, we actually have to make this much of this. But now it's just another day, so it's not too bad.
Speaking of making beers at bigger scales and just another day in the brew house, you recently expanded into a new production facility. almost tripling or quadrupling the brewing space from the original location, if I have my numbers right.
Yeah, so I want to say our original, like actual space for brewing was probably around uh, probably 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. The current actual brewing area we're working with is now.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Like we say, Isaac, it's not Brews Less Travel without technical difficulties.
Absolutely. Just that left side of that mustache is sticking out perfectly.
Yeah, it's a good screen pause moment.
Yeah,
Dude, I am just digging these beers so much.
yeah. Well, maybe it's like the novelty of like an afternoon beer. A little bit. I mean, the beers are good. I'm just saying, maybe it's the, hey, I'm gonna have 2 beers in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you never have to twist my arm.
No, I was at the brewery earlier.
Yeah.
I haven't talked about that on this show
Yeah.
yet. I guess I
Yeah.
should probably. Yeah, quick plug. I'm a taproom manager at a new brewery in Pittsburgh called Low Lev Beer. You can find us at 5247 Butler Street. Come and visit me. But I was there earlier and I was doing some social media photos and just some getting some assets for future posts, and we poured a beer for it, and I had to like really stop myself from drinking our show beer, because I knew I was coming here to record this and
More.
have a few more tasty beverages. Yeah. So
I've constantly every year battle around doing dry January, but I always settle on a moist January. There's
slightly damp
like,
January.
it gets wet occasionally. It's hard. Yeah. It's tough, and there's so many, the holiday season, like for me particularly, for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm that guy that's always bringing the bottles to the family that, oh, here Isaac's not going to drink anything else, he's bringing his own beer. It's like, here he comes with the barley wine again, nobody's going to appreciate this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the time to sort of clear the cellar out and get ready for the new year. Or a time of reflection and not being a trash animal, and actually doing a dry January instead of a moist January. So
yeah, I mean, that all sounds good, but I'm not going to participate in any of those things. I'm just going to continue drinking the same way that I do, especially
responsibly throughout the year.
Yeah, I responsibly pace myself. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but I take a few days off every week, like designated.
Oh.
I typically do not drink on Mondays or Tuesdays, although the podcast recording schedule has kind of screwed with that.
Screwed that up a little bit. Yeah.
Screwed that up a bit, yeah. And I'm sure sensory at the new job will eventually mess that up too. But yeah, it's good to pace yourself, good to take some breaks. And like you've alluded to, I am certainly going to take some of my ridiculous beers that I have in my cellar to Christmas and holiday gatherings, and my relatives that normally drink, for lack of a better word, pedestrian craft beers. I'm going to show up and be like, hey, you want to have some of this 15% barrel-aged barley wine?
I've got this bottle. We need to split it among at least 8 people.
Yeah.
Or else we're not going to make it to the evening.
It's time to show your gratitude for the year. And we're going to do that by drinking a 2016 bottling of East End's Gratitude barley wine.
Speaking of which, Brian actually scored a couple verticals of gratitude for me. Was it last year or 2 years ago?
I think it was, oh my God, it was 2 or 3 years ago now.
Yeah. I have been threatening everybody with that vertical. Every bottle share, every time people come over. It's like, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to go through it. Still all in the cellar. We haven't cracked one.
Justin.
Muted, Justin. It brings you in muted. There you go.
Better?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
howdy.
My computer just took a shit on me, so sorry about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's great. No,
Yeah. This is probably
Yeah.
better anyway. It looks better.
yeah, we're good.
No, this is great. The lighting's phenomenal. The audio sounds good. We're back in business, baby.
Well, I'm gonna go grab my other Ambear and my other chocolate milk stout, and we'll just start from the beginning again. No. No, so Justin, when you were having technical difficulties there, you were talking about the expansion of the new space.
Yes. Yeah. So we've gotten into, like I said, almost double the space that we were into before. We had gotten our canning line in our old space, and we barely would fit it in, like rolling in and out. We were basically mobile canning in our old location for almost 2 years. During COVID, that's all we did was just can out that location. So it was just kind of crazy. But the space now, when we added it, so we originally had, I believe, like 13 or 14 fermenters, and now we have 16. We had 2 bright tanks, now we have 4. So with our move, we increased our production, and we have the ability now to just keep up a lot more with our canned product, because we were doing everything out of 2 bright tanks. So it was really hard to just juggle everything up and down.
A lot to
Our new
manage.
facility has like proper flooring. It's way more suitable for actual higher production of beer. Our glycol unit is better. Like everything about it is just like way more suitable for us expanding and doing more beer in the future, which was a whole part of it. That and our old location was in a spot where we didn't have much control of our lease or what was going on with our landlord. So we still have our tap room there. It's still a beautiful facility. We just needed to move out because we couldn't do much more expanding in that location. We could really max it out. And so it was time to find some place where we could kind of have a little bit of elbow room, not only with packaging, but just with our ability to just kind of grow. So it went from our main facility in on the edge of Corrales there to we opened a tap room. I want to say this was 2015 or something around there. We had we had a tap room open in what's called the West Downtown area of Albuquerque, and then a year later we opened our tap room in on the east side of town, and then pretty much a year later we opened what is now our new location, which is our Firestone location. Our Firestone location is where we do all of our production, but we also have a tap room there. So we had our tap room open almost a year before our brewery was in actually up and running, and people could just kind of walk by and have a beer and kind of peek their head in there and just see insanity, which was kind of cool to have the pub. While I was working in the back trying to install everything, it was kind of nice to have like customers already inside, as opposed to before when we were just cranking away and just wanting to open the doors. So it's been nice, but having our new location has really helped us with our production has been a lot easier. It's been a lot smoother. The other thing, when you move your brewery, after 8 years, you realize what you haven't been cleaning as well. And you get a lot better at making sure that stuff stays clean. So it was kind of like a necessary thing. It was kind of nice to just like pull, all the stuff apart, put it back together, and realize that it's like, hey, we're doing this pretty well, or maybe we got to be a little bit better at that stuff. So open my eyes a little.
Definitely.
That's my favorite analogy of if you ever bought or sold a home before, or even just moved. It's like you wait till the very end of like your tenure in that location to fix all the shit that you've just dealt with over the past, X number of years. You're like, when you go to the bathroom, you gotta twist the doorknob a quarter of the left, and then jiggle it a little bit, pull up, down, left, right. And yeah, then it'll lock properly. And people are like, you live like this? You know, and then you fix it before you move or before you sell. And it's like, we should have done this ages ago.
Yeah, we had the time, we had the ability, and yeah, so there's lots of stuff like that where it's like, okay, let's make this a part of our regular maintenance and ability to like keep this place running. But it's definitely something you learn along the way. But I mean, it was kind of like one of those blessing in disguise things where it's like, let's learn from this. You know, we find stuff that you know. But luckily, like I said, it wasn't, we didn't have any like major production components dirty and stuff like that. It was just like small stuff. We're like, hey, maybe we should shine the outside of the brew house every now and then because there's stainless steel there, not just, you know, dirty metal. So it's stuff like that where we're like, okay, cool. We can take better care of this stuff. We've done it. So now we can keep doing it.
Cool. All right. So outside of your brewery, what is one thing that you wish New Mexico was more well known for?
Oh man, I mean, so New Mexico is pretty well known for food, right? I think obviously culture too. There's man, that's hard to say. You know, I don't know if people outside of New Mexico see the just like general coolness of our like high desert area is kind of interesting. Because when I go to like places like Colorado, you know, you have your city, right? And if you want to go to the mountains or if you want to go to a lake or something, you're going to drive like 3 hours, right? Like New Mexico is so unique because we have our mountain range right here in Albuquerque, the Sandy is, you can drive 45 minutes and be hiking a mountain. You can drive, you know, another hour, you know, north towards the Jemez, and you're going to be in a beautiful like, you know, pine trees, and it's cool and it's nice and it feels like another state. So I think like our ability to have like really awesome outdoor stuff kind of ties in with like our brewery a little bit. We have our tramway location, which is right there where everybody gets done hiking. They come down and have a beer and some tacos, and it's just it's definitely part of like New Mexico's so like if REI was cheaper, it would be the biggest brand in New Mexico because everyone's so outdoorsy and it already, you know, stuff like that. But it's we've got like a really fun outdoor just haven, and it's never too cold or too hot, you know, but enough to be challenging where every year there's some people who get like lost in the Andes trying to hike. Because it's just difficult enough. People don't think it's like, oh, it's a desert, you're gonna have a mountain out there. It's like, no, this is part of the Rockies. It's like the end of the Rockies. You're gonna die out there if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So but that being said, like you can't get down to a lot of places. You can't go you know, to most major cities and drive less than an hour and be someplace completely different. That is, you know, you can grab a 4-pack of beer and go out to the mountains and just like have a great time, even for the day where you're not, it's not a 10-hour experience. Yeah, that's what I've experienced in other cities. Like, let's go to the mountain. You're like, cool. And it's like, I don't want to drive 3 hours there and 3 hours back. Like for me, I'm like, let's just go right there. And so that's how it feels for us. It's something that, you know, it doesn't get as much attention as the outdoor kind of high desert fun stuff we get to deal with.
So what I'm hearing is that you guys have 4 out of 8 Planet Earth episodes.
Yeah, I mean, we have you know, it's 100 some plus degrees in the summer, and we get plenty of snow sometimes.
Yeah,
So
you're like missing the deep sea, and then that's it.
Yeah, if we had like, we have, you know, we just had, they call it the land of enchantment, you know, and then people that live here call it the land of entrapment. So,
Jesus,
House
that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Justin. Anything to plug before we get out of here?
What was that? Sorry.
Anything to plug?
Yeah, boxing beer. I would definitely check it out. No, honestly, yeah, the New Mexico beer scene alone is really cool. It's growing. You know, as far as like visiting us, it's different than other places because, like I said, there's so much like general like beer scene in a small area. New Mexico is like the biggest small city, or sorry, Albuquerque is like the biggest small city in the world. Everybody seems to know each other, but it's a weird like small LA kind of feel to it. But it's got that kind of nice cultural just adaptation to it. So it's a fun place to live and be, and I definitely encourage anybody that's never been to the Southwest to come check us out, especially if you like good beer. I think we're definitely an underrated state as far as the quality of beer. We don't have a ton of breweries, but most of them are actually pretty good. We got a good amount of like local places that are just making great product and doing good stuff as far as the like brewery and beer community goes. So it's been fun to be a part of what's grown here in the state.
Definitely. You can follow Boxing Bear at Boxing Bear Brewing on Instagram. You can also head over to boxingbearbrewing.com for all the information, all their different locations, the beers they're putting out. And thanks to Boxing Bear for supplying beers for this episode.
Yeah, anytime. Let's do it again. And like I said, follow us on social media. That's the best way to know what we're going to have on tap. We have tons of different beers coming out all the time. So sometimes our website can get even behind with what we're putting out, because I mean, even this week, I think we're putting out maybe 1 or 2 new beers. So
heck yes. Thanks to all of our New Mexico breweries for helping us close out the year with such a great beer box. Shout out to Ex Novo, Gravity Bound, Marble, and of course, Boxing Bear. Isaac, final thoughts on New Mexico 2022, the year ahead?
Glad to be back again for one more month of Brews Less Traveled. Always a pleasure. I have never been to New Mexico. I've never been to Albuquerque. Would love to go. I think this past month has really solidified it. I think, Justin, you said it back, not a lot of breweries, but you all are doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
I can finally put the green or red to bed and just have both. I think at the start of this month, I wanted it all. They're like Czech or German Pilsner, and I was like, I want both.
Yeah.
And I feel that way. I want it all. Variety is the spice of life. So I'm looking forward to my visit to Albuquerque for sure. It's just one more place on the map that I want to go to now. So
yeah. And when you do, just let me know. I'll show you where to get the green or the red. It's going to be dependent on where you go, or what your mood is like, how drunk you were the night before.
Yeah. We had one brewer suggest that I wade across the Rio Grande. So
sometimes there's not enough water. You might be able to walk across. So,
well, there you go. Justin, we're excited to have you be our chili shaman when we come to Albuquerque.
I would absolutely love that.
And yeah,
chili shaman.
I'll put it on my card.
Yeah, there you go. That's a new title. We'll head over to brewvana.com to see subscription options for the Brews Less Traveled Beer Club. We're continuing this thing in 2023, of course. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you're digging the show. It helps us grow awareness and get more listeners and allow us to continue to do this and grow this wonderful community that's come up around this podcast and these uncharted beer scenes. An update here: we are actually going to take a break next week. This will be our last episode for 2022, and then the following week, the first episode of the first week of January 2023, we're actually going to take a break, and then we'll be back with a new episode from our next featured city the following week. We're going to the Rockies, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're going near the Rocky Mountains, at least. Join us as we kick off 2023 with Fort Collins, Colorado, as our featured city. So excited about that. We're featuring some amazing breweries out there, and these will not be episodes you want to miss out on. So until then, stay safe, be kind, and support local breweries, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Thanks for watching Brews Less Traveled on YouTube. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more interviews with brewery professionals.